Everything's okay? Excellent.
Well, I cannot see over here. Hocam şu, baksanıza şu yukarıyı göremiyorum ya.
Test. Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billahil aliyyil azim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Dear colleagues, friends, and our guests, welcome to the talk of Dr. Hakan KONI. Before his presentation, as usual, let me introduce him to you very briefly. Today is the subject is a comparative understanding of politics and religion, comparing two nation states, Turkey and Malaysia. So that the full title of the talk of Dr. Hakan KONI is Comparative Study of Different Trajectories of State and Religion Nexus, the cases of Malaysia and Turkey. Hocam, welcome. So let me introduce Hakan KONI. Assistant Professor Hakan KONI is a faculty member at the Department of Political Science and Public Administration of Ankara Science University. He previously served at University of Technology Malaysia in Sukudai, Johor Bahru, and in 2015 and 2016. Then he moved back to Istanbul and worked at Istanbul Rumeli University, a private university, and Çankırı University. He has been at Princeton University and Durham University before as a visiting scholar and faculty member to work on various research topics and publications. Dr. Hakan's main study areas of interest and specialization include Turkish politics, comparative politics, politics of religion, political ideologies, and partially political philosophy. And Dr. Hakan is our guest today. He will be with us till Thursday, and his second talk will be on Gombak campus on Thursday at 11 o'clock. So the subject is not easy one, even though it's popular, but very difficult subject, politics and religion. So Turkey is known a kind of a role model for some other similar countries, but it has very different political stages. Even though Dr. Hakan does not refer, I guess, the vocabulary or concept of laicism, he will use some different vocabulary, but I emphasize laicism is very dominating political concept in Turkish case. On the other hand, Malaysia has different stories, historically and contemporary stages. It has unique characteristics. Probably we may call it a secular state. I refer to one of the former retired judge. He gave a talk a few months ago in Kuala Lumpur. So, this is, I hope, will contribute to understand what has been happening in these countries. I think this is very early stage of his research activity. Your questions, your statements, understanding will contribute to him at the same time. Okay, the floor is yours, Dr. Hakan. Welcome.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Let me start by giving my thanks to Mr. Mehmet and to Istac in general for the facilitation of such a meeting and such a speech here. Thank you very much for this. It's a very nice, wonderful experience for me. I hope that you're going to enjoy my speech and presentation here today. So the subject, the title of my speech presentation today is, as you can see, as you know, is the comparative study of different trajectories of state religion nexus with regard to the cases of Malaysia and Turkey. I suppose quite some of our friends know the experience of the togetherness of Islam and religion and Malaysia in general, but regarding the case of Turkey, I think that's going to be the new part of the speech for you. So my intention was to start with the Malaysian case in the beginning part, but considering this prerogative, I decided to start with the Turkish case with the suggestion of our Professor MEHMET Hoca too. So in this speech, shortly, we are going to be examining the place occupied by religion and political life in Turkey and Malaysia, which focus on how questions particularly and on why questions slightly, let me say. Starting with Turkey, the type of relationship between religion and politics in Turkey displays quite some variation across Republican history. I decided to investigate the history of relations between two in 4 periods that we can count here as the single-party period from 1920s to 1950s, multi-party period from 1950s to 1980s, the period from the mid-1980s to early 2000, and the AK-party period for the last 20 years that we are experiencing now. What we can say for all these periods in general is that the space of action and freedoms has turned more favorable and amenable in every new period for the religion and political and public life in general. So my intention is not actually to investigate these periods one by one, but it may look like a little bit, at the end. So my focus, is not going to be investigating, I'm not going to be investigating all of these periods specifically, but some of them are going to be investigated more here and some others less. If we start with the single-party period, it is a period actually very much notorious with the implementation of highly constraining state policies towards religion. In this period, the state elites generally considered it necessary to minimize the effect of religion in political and public life for the development of the country. So this was a thinking and mentality supported at that time. So for quite some of them, the Ottoman Empire had collapsed, especially because of this, especially because it had not preferred to minimize the effect of religion in public life. So with this belief and thinking, some aggressive secular policies and practices are adopted. Some of them that we can count it here as the abolition of the caliphate, the renunciation of the Islamic law from all legal spheres, and westernization of the legal system almost altogether, removal of the constitutional article stating Islam as the religion of the state, adoption of the constitutional article of secularism, prohibition of some Islamic clothing for men particularly, and prohibition of going for pilgrimage. So until the mid of 1920s, Turkey was actually an Islamic state. It was written in the constitution that the religion of the state in Turkey was Islam. But for the reasons above, This article has been dismissed, removed from the constitution until today. The secularism of the single-party period suffered heavy influences from French laicism, originating from the French model of modernization and Jacobinism. I am sure you are familiar with this type of modernization and secularism. So for the French, the religion was a socially and politically inhibitive, exploitative, and authoritarian institution. And Turkish secularism of the time was, by the same vein, elitist in character. Accordingly, the people were, deemed generally as uneducated, ignorant, and incompetent in political matters. And they were considered as being inclined to be misguided by some ignorant group of elites. And for this reason, they had to be guided by some enlightened class of statesmen who were the secularist state elites for the time being. So such practices and policies went on in Turkey until the period of multi-party political life that has been introduced in mid-1940s under domestic and international pressures. So from this period onward, some liberating and facilitating policies are taken into implementation, particularly for the reason of the elections approaching and for the parties started to need to show their beautiful face to the people for their votes. This is usually the cause given for such policies, actually. So starting with this period, some liberating and facilitating policies are adopted, like the removal of the ban on going for pilgrimage, introduction of elective religious courses in the schools, opening of Imam Hatib courses, and liberation of the recital of the Azan in Arabic. So this was one of the most controversial issues of the time. So for a period of time in Turkey, the prayer call is given in Turkish. So it was made Turkish, but with this period, actually, it's been left free to read it in Turkish or Arabic. So most of the imams prefer to give the Azan in Arabic from this time onward. The elections took place 1946, and the next election is taken by Democrat Party. So the election in 1950 brought Democrat Party, opposing party, to the government, and it meant a fundamental change for the time being, because the 30 years of Republican, secularist Republican People's Party government had come to its end, and the liberal conservative Democrat Party won the elections. And for the next 10 years, they stayed in power, and they introduced so many, let us say, rights and liberties and freedoms for religious groups in the country. So I gave some examples here, including, for example, the liberation of religious publication, various religious publications, because until that time, it wasn't fully free to publish on religious matters. They introduced some freedom, the Democrat Party, with them coming to the government. And they started some new mosque construction campaigns and Quran recitation campaign, something like that, started in state radios. And new Imam Hatib schools, the Imam Hatib schools are opened in this period. And the religious lessons in the schools, their hours have been increased, if I'm not mistaken, from 1 to 2 hours or 2 to 3 hours, something like that. So the DP was, it differed from the Republican People's Party, its predecessor, with its more moderate and Americanist conception of secularism, compared to the French one of the Republican People's Party. We had a military intervention in 1960. The Democrat Party is closed. We are going to come to that subject maybe later on a little bit. The party is closed. There has been a military intervention. So a new party is established in its place, more or less with the same ideological line, with the name Justice Party. and it won quite some elections from 1963 onwards, and it went on with the DP campaign generally on the subject with some new and old, let us say, policies. So they, for example, get into building some new Imam Hatip schools and Quran courses. They went on promoting religious education and publications, but this time they decided to use religion to combat radical leftist movements too. So they discovered a new area for the use or positive use of religion in public political life, which was also supported by the secularists of the time too, to some extent. Most of the liberating reforms of the past are, maintained after the military intervention in 1960, but the new constitution adopted in 1961 introduced some, some important things for the subject under investigation here. It made secularism particularly an institutional aspect of Turkish political life. For example, the Article 2 of the Constitution and Article 68, Paragraph 4 of the Constitution prohibited to base the fundamental social, economic, political, and legal order of the state on religious dogmas. So this has been made a constitutional article with 1961. And the violation of this principle is made punishable if it was violated by parties and the people. The Army Internal Service Code adopted in 1961, so it is also a kind of legal document. It gave the Turkish army the duty to intervene in the political processes in cases of the massive violation of this principle, which meant actually that the military was allowed to intervene in political process with intervention, with what we know as a coup, something like with a legal power. But most importantly, the Constitution established the National Security Council, which was the council that brought the military bureaucracy and civilian bureaucracy together every month to discuss significant national security issues, during which they were able to deliver their opinions and recommendations to the civilian members of the bureaucracy. So even though they were recommendations, sometimes they turned to be some kind of dictate actually, particularly in later periods. This has been a very disturbing stuff for politicians. But if you are to open a parenthesis here, the composition and the structure, let us say, the National Security Council has been changed substantially by the recent AK Party. The number of military members has been decreased. The secretary, for example, previously it was the secretary of the council was a military officer. It's made a civilian officer. And the power to determine the agenda of the discussions is given to the president. So the powers of the council is minimized substantially, and the meeting period is, I think, decreased to once in every 2 months, if I'm not mistaken, from 1 month to 2 months. So now it is a civilian-dominated council, compared to the past, and it doesn't, have such a significant, let us say, influence in the government of the state and the society in general today, we have to say. Okay. The Turkish judiciary also acquired quite some powers and privileges with the 1961 constitution, which established the Constitutional Court and the Supreme Court. So they have been particularly influential actually in party closure cases and in interpreting the behaviors of the politicians regarding their alleged violations of secularism. It was particularly active in closing parties in Turkey because of their claimed violation of secularism. Some of those parties, you maybe know, include National Order Party, Erbakan's National Order Party, established in 1969. So it lived only 2 years, if I'm not mistaken. National Salvation Party, Welfare Party, and Virtue Party. I mean, all the first three of these parties were led by Najmat Narbakan, and the last one, I mean, was led from outside by him, not directly. But these has been the parties that Turkish judiciary has closed and has been active in the process as a leading member of the secularist state elites in Turkey. I would like to, say something on Erbakan's National Salvation Party in the context. This party was established in 1971 or 1972, and it survived until the 1980 military intervention. And it has been active in the process, in the context, particularly when it was a part of the coalition governments. It, for example, engaged in campaigns for increased our religious education in the schools, building new mosques and Imam Hatib schools, and redesign of the school curricula in greater conformity with religious teachings. So the National Salvation Party of Erbakan is closed in 1980, and after some period, the Welfare Party is established in its place with more or less the same, actually, party program and practices. So it went on signifying issues of religious concern in public life, regarding the Imam Hatib schools, headscarf issue, Quran courses, and other popular matters. But some people argued that the ambitions of the party went a bit far over its capabilities. It was not able to do something, more than, to talk and comment and criticize certain things without being able to do much, because they did not have power. They also had the fear of backlash from the secularist groups in the country. The party in 1997 came with a proposal in the parliament, to introduce Islamic law in the country, in the context of a pluralist legal system, like the one that we have in Malaysia today, for example. But this offer is taken very, heavily, very harshly, and it's been rejected in the parliament very shortly, for the time being. And it has been one of the causes, for example, one of the claims by the public prosecutor, that by coming up with such a proposal in the parliament, the party violated the secularist principle, and that it had to be closed for this particular reason. So for this and for some other reasons, the Welfare Party is closed during the course of 28 February process, and its properties are all confiscated, and its leadership, including Erbakan and some other 5 to 10 people, and quite some ministers and parliamentarians, they have been removed from political life altogether. So Erbakan Hoca, spent the last 10 years of his life, I guess, outside of the political process, just giving speeches as an individual person from time to time. But what happened after this is that, the non-banned members of the Welfare Party collected around AK Party, and AK Party, has won all the parliamentary and government elections since it came to power in 2001. So for the last more than 20 years, it's winning all, the parliamentary and presidential elections. Even though the last election was won with a small margin, it still won it. We don't know what is going to happen in the next elections, however. Of course, the problems went on with the secular state elites, that sometimes reflected on the TV, sometimes reflected on the media, that we were able to follow, very frequently. And a closure case is also opened against AK Party, which was rejected with a small margin. The party was also getting almost closed, but it still suffered some punishment. So the court decided that the AK Party also violated secularism, but that those violations did not arrive at closing the party, but that it was supposed to be punished with some kind of monetary sanctions that, the money that is collected from the treasury was cut at an amount of half for the next electoral period. AK Party, however, compared to its predecessors, dropped the previous hidden or let us say, unhidden campaign of introducing Islamic law and statehood in the country anymore. But it kept pressing for the issues, though, the above issues mentioned regarding the imam schools, headscarf issue, Quran courses, and those kind of methods generally, with a legalistic and democratic perspective that we have to say, however. So AK Party, they took some lessons, willingly or unwillingly, that whatever they do, they have to do it with a legalistic and democratic perspective, whether they can do it or not. The headscarf issue was a very popular one. This was one of the most significant matters of, controversy, for some 20, 30 years maybe in Turkish political life. The problem is now recovered. Now we don't have a headscarf problem in Turkey in general, in public sphere particularly. But in the past, it was the hottest, I guess it was the hottest topic of, secularism, debates on secularism in Turkey. Shortly mention about the past of the problem. In the past, it was not forbidden legally, but something like customarily. It was not like for the woman to come to the schools and the public places with a headscarf. But in 1984, after the military intervention in 1980, a ban is brought to the wearing of headscarf in schools and universities. Of course, the right parties, the parties of the right, did not like this ban because they considered wearing headscarf as a necessity of the freedom of belief and religion. So for the parties of the right, this ban was an explicit violation of the law of various human rights, and it could not have been accepted from a legal and democratic point of view. So this ban turned to a very serious problem with its widespread use by the students from the late 1980s. The literature usually talks about an Islamic awakening in Turkey with late 1980s, and with that time, headscarf became a very common picture in the public life in Turkey, and from then on, this ban, gets into some kind of application because the secularists in the country started to get disturbed with the use and visibility of the headscarf in the schools and universities. And this became one of the reasons, actually, one of the reasons for the closure of welfare parties, even though it is not mentioned directly. The standing of the party regarding the headscarf issue was very much well known. This stuff has been almost a flag matter in the debates and discussions of religion and politics in Turkey. So for the secularists, the visibility of the headscarf was something like the lose of the secularism in the country. But for the others, it was the opposite. It turned to something like the opposite. The party won the elections in 2001, and it quickly started to, remove this ban. But it met with very heavy reaction by the secularists. And several attempts are made. They even went as far as, attacking the use of headscarf by the wife of the president of the country too. So, they directly issued warning, directly and indirectly, issuing warnings to the parliamentarians and ministers and even the president that they mustn't come to the meetings and assemblies and those kind of places with their wives wearing headscarf. But after some various attempts, the ban is eventually removed in 2007 during the presidency of Abdullah Gül, let us say, in the process of Turkey becoming, let us say, trying to be a member of the European Union. By the aid of, let us say, EU process, EU integration process, and we can say that this problem has been, solved almost altogether. So now it is free to use headscarf. We don't have such a problem in the country, in public particularly. And our president, Erdogan, made a speech lastly, to put a dot on this matter there, saying that, we are not going to have any woman being condemned because she wears the headscarf, and we are not going to have any man having a trouble in the country because of him having a beard. So he said, Turkey is not going to have any of those problems anymore. I don't want to face them, he said. So now in the public life, we don't have such a problem. But in private life this time, in the private sector, sometimes we are having news with the ladies are not being accepted to certain jobs, because certain private sector jobs, because they are wearing headscarf. Not very commonly, but from time to time, such kind of news come up in the media. The other historical hot topic of the relationship between religion and politics in political life is the Imam Hatip schools. Now we don't have such a problem again. This has been a past problem. Even though we hear some news, some people not being very much pleased with the state of Imam Hatip schools in the country. Generally speaking, we can say that we have recovered this problem now almost altogether. So during the 28th February process particularly, these schools were something like driven into suppression. Their secondary school divisions were closed. Their graduates were not able to compete under the same conditions with the students of other schools in the university entrance exam. They were highly disadvantaged in taking the university entrance exam. In the past, they had female-male separated classes, but they were forced to give united education, with the girls and the boys studying in the same class. And the headscarf was also forbidden for them too. So they were coming to Imam Hatip schools, but they were not able to wear headscarf. That was another problem. And their graduates were not allowed to apply to be a police or military officer. And that was unimaginable for the time being. To shortly, if you have to have a look at the curriculum of Imam Hatip School shortly, they had courses in Arabic, courses in Quran, the life of the Messenger, Quranic exegesis, tafsir, hadith, and such, let us say, classical Islamic sciences, in addition to classical modern school courses that we are having in secular schools, let us say. Again, in the process of Turkey applying to be an EU member, this problem is recovered as of 2011, and they today remain as a kind of popular public educational institution in Turkey. So this was a past problem, and we are not hoping to have it as a new problem again in the future, this or that way. Diyanet, which is the Directorate of Religious Affairs in Turkey, was not a significant issue of controversy during the 28th February process. But afterwards, it started to collect some negative attention by some chambers. Generally, it suffered some minimization in its budget and staff during the 28th February process, but they were not usually, disturbed by it. So imams in Turkey are very patient people. They usually prefer not to come into conflict with the government and the state. And if they suffered some problems, they prefer to keep silent. They did not, some kind of get into, political controversy with the state elites in the country. So today, we have got around 130,000 mosque imams and auxiliary staff in Turkey, and they manage a budget around $1 billion every year. Actually, this budget is not, it did not increase so much in dollar terms. In Turkish lira terms, it increased, but in dollar terms, it is more or less stable. And the increase in the number of staff is actually not over the increase of the number of staff of other, let us say, workers of the public sector. So increase is actually very much parallel with the increase in the number of the, for example, schools in the teachers in the schools, doctors in the hospitals, and other civil servants in other sectors of the public life. So they are now enjoying the same kind of, let us say, treatment with the other civil servants generally. What I want to say particularly is that, Diyanet is an institution in Turkey that doesn't have any political, administrative, and legal powers, unlike some of its counterparts in various Western democracies. It does not have any involvement in educational life in the schools, in providing them with teachers and course materials. So Diyanet is in one place. The religious lessons in the schools and imamative schools are at another place. Education is under the control of Ministry of Education in Turkey altogether. And they don't have any legal powers. For example, they cannot judge anything. They don't have any administrative roles. And politically, they don't have any powers. Some years ago, they have established a TV broadcasting on subjects relating to non-political aspects of Islam in general, and they have started a kindergarten service for the age group of 4 to 8 years of children, and it stepped into the halal sector in the issuance of halal certificate to food and various other items in cooperation with various other government offices. Since 2018, it registers civil marriages. Until then, it was not able to do so. But it still cannot judge over divorce cases and inheritance cases, unlike what we have in many democratic countries today. Diyanet collects some donations from the government through the General Directorate of Foundations, and this has been a very serious issue of criticism by the secularist chambers in Turkey, who started to say that the government is funding Diyanet with very generous donations from public property. So I don't know. They are having some real estate donations, Vakıf donations particularly, foundation donations, and those kind of things. And they, in 2019, they amounted to $115 million US. But those donations, allocations, real estate allocations particularly, cannot be used for commercial purposes in Turkey. So that's an important point actually, that I can try to explain a bit more. So if Diyanet is having, let us say, some real estate donations, let us say that they have got a building donated to them, they cannot turn it into a kind of market, they cannot turn it into a kind of factory, they cannot try to produce something inside and sell it to the people, but they can just use it as a kind of religious facility, and that's all. And they cannot, by the way, have direct monetary donations. They can only have something like real estate donations. So if Diyanet wants to construct and repair some religious places, they must do it with the donations by the people in general, but not by donations by the government. I had some section on interest-free banking, but maybe from this point I have to move to the Malaysian side of the picture where the color of the picture changes substantially. Maybe I'm going to find some time to talk about Islamic banking, interest-free banking too. Yeah. So we come to the side of Malaysia and you can see the picture changes all of a sudden.
Professor requesting if you talk a bit
No.
shortly about Islam, finance and Turkey.
Okay.
We want to know the
Yeah,
Turkish
yes,
section
yes,
of the Malaysian.
yes.
Before 1980s, we did not have anything like Islamic banking in Turkey. At that time was actually the time of, let us say, private, some kind of private banking activities in Turkey. We had some kind of bankers crisis at that time in Turkey. Individual people collecting money from the people in return for high interest rates. We had, for example, the incidence of Banker Castelli, various bankers who were collecting money, from the people without any state regulation, just privately, and trying to give interest rate, sometimes being able to pay the people, and sometimes running away with the money and disappearing altogether. So in mid-1980s, we had an experience of Islamic banking introduced into Turkish banking system during during when Turgut Özal was the prime minister, and this sector started to grow substantially. From that time onward, it became highly popular. And the reason AK Party is, they have sensitivities about issues of interest too. Erdogan particularly tried to keep the interest rates at a minimum, in violation of, let us say, the basic principles of, economy. And he, showed quite a resistance to the demands of keeping the interest a bit high for various reasons, they say. But unfortunately, he was not able to, maintain, his principles on the issue, particularly during the last presidential elections. He received so much, criticism regarding his policy on interest, and he had to a bit concede on this matter. So until that time, the interest rate was as low as 10% in Turkey. So while all the countries were rising interest rates, Turkey was decreasing the interest rates to observe quite some benefits with it, actually. So today, unfortunately, this is one of the areas that the government is not able to do best. The interest rates are very high in Turkey, and it's a bit outside of the control of the government, because the central bank in Turkey is independent of the government, and they are deciding on the rates of interest, independently of the government. So even though our president and the party in the government, is not very much in peace with interest, that is something that they cannot do much. But regarding those private Islamic banking institutions in general, today we can say that they are really, very powerful and getting more and more powerful each and every year, every day. But compared to Malaysia, I suppose we are quite backward. We are quite behind. Okay, let us see, coming to the Malaysian case, so we are going to see a very different picture here. So the picture is very different. It becomes something like upside down. I am sure many of you already know the Malaysian experience, so I'm going to be a bit making a review here for you, the subject that you know already. Islam has historically been an important institution in Malay socio-political life for centuries. Like it was the case with the Ottoman state and society. Islam was the major legitimate source of the Malay kings for over centuries. And it was one of the major jobs of Malay kings to observe Islamic law in the society and to distribute justice among the people accordingly. Even during the colonial times, I mean, this principle did not change. It has been, again, one of the leading legitimate source to Malay kings. And with the Malaysian independence in 1957, this principle got into the constitution, and Islam became the official religion of Malaysia. Unlike Turkey, Syria, and Tunisia and some other countries, Malaysia did not have a secularist state elites who viewed the separation of religion and state as a necessity of modernization. So Malaysia did not have a campaign against political, legal, and social representations of religion and public life in general. And it started to occupy a gradually strengthening position in Malaysia with the passage of time after independence. I mean, this is usually attributed to the increasing rate of literacy and knowledge of Islamic resources in general, the actively growing Islamic civil society, the growth of a Middle East educated Islamic intelligentsia, who are very famous members, I mean, in Malaysian case, and inspirations from Islamic experiments in Iran and Afghanistan. And I mean, Islamic awakening, I mean, let us say, took a greater speed with Mahathir coming to power in 1980s during his 20 years of, I mean, leadership in Malaysian political life. So Mahathir, heading the UMNO, supported the idea that, as most of us know probably, Islam is an important part of Malaysian socio-political life, and a fully secular political system is terribly alien to the Malay society. So this has been very difficult to speak in Turkey at that time, but it was very much easy and simple to speak in Turkey, in Malaysia. Together with PAS, I mean, it is argued that UMNO has supported the view that Islam is a highly sophisticated and systematic religion with a highly developed legal and political system. And this was proved by centuries of exercise and refinement that it went through. With some revision and reformations, it was believed that Islamic law could have been brought into peace with Western legal traditions without much difficulty. And further to that, implementation of, let us say, Islamic legal and political principles would rely on the democratic consent of the people, and it would apply to the Muslims only. So the non-Muslims would be left out of the application of Islamic legal judicial principles particularly. So, I mean, accordingly, if the Islamic norms made sense to the Malaysian Muslims for UMNO and PAS, it had to be respected from a legal and democratic point of view. So for Malaysian society, that was what democracy meant. But for the Turkish case, it meant, I mean, the opposite. I don't know how. So today, Islam is in an institutional state of engagement with Malaysian public political life in its laws, bureaucracy, public administration, political institutions, parties, and public social bodies. JAKIM, and before that, Pusat Islam, is performing the duty of advising, supervising, scrutinizing, and even enacting the Islamic law in cooperation with federal and provincial bodies. And JAKIM becomes active in many processes of socio-political life of the Malaysian Muslims. And it possesses a law enforcement unit, and powers of prosecution. And it is even capable of arresting the Muslims when they are detected to violate the laws, and it can even lead them into the trial room if seen necessary. And as many of us know, in various states in Malaysia, like in Kelantan, Terengganu, meeting with, I mean, they are facing now the challenge of the introduction of Islamic criminal law. I don't know at what process it is at the moment, but in the past it was, I mean, very popular subject in Malaysia. I am sure they are still trying to give their struggle. Party Islam, say Malaysia, in some of the provinces, as we know, it wins the elections, and it is, I mean, waging its campaign to put the Islamic criminal law into force, and it maintains its diplomacy with Federal Assembly for the ratification of the law. So according to Malaysian law, for such things to come into effect, they have to have the approval of the Federal Assembly also. In states like Kedah, Perlis, Pahang, Kelantan, and Terengganu, where the electoral majority is secured by UMNO or PAS, so measures are additionally taken into force towards the banning of alcohol sale, gambling, dancing, and nightclubs for the Muslims, as subjects of interest for the topic under investigation discussion here. But I don't know at what process these states are regarding these issues now. I mean, sometimes they are undergoing some changes, some new prohibitions come. Sometimes, I mean, they leave certain things free. But these are, I know that, very popular topics of, I mean, debate and practice in the context. I mean, some of the resources that I have investigated regarding the subject argue that, I mean, they say that non-Muslims, quite some of the non-Muslims are not disturbed with such policies in their states. And some of them are even pleased with generous social services provided by conservative governments in their states. And they also, some of those people, non-Muslims particularly, they also argue, I mean, believe that their attachment to Islamic political, I mean, principles make them less corruptible at the same time, and produce, let us say, a better government for themselves. So unlike what some people could argue that, I mean, the Islamic politics, political life, Islamic law, Islamic things can be, I mean, a bit apprehensible for the non-Muslims. In Malaysian case, some of the resources that I have studied say that, I mean, the non-Muslims are not so much disturbed with Islamic political practices in the country, and some of them are even pleased with it. And that's a very surprising thing. So this is the part of the how question of the religion and politics in Turkey, in the case of Turkey and Malaysia in general. So I had some time to spend on the why question also. Why do we have two different pictures of countries having two different type of relations between religion and politics? And actually, this is not a less important issue. I mean, some of the causes that I was able to discover was that, I mentioned some of them shortly, is the different roads of modernization adopted in these two different countries. Turkey being impressed with the French model, and Malaysia, I mean, being pleased with the British model in general. Actually, I mean, if you look at the global landscape, we can say that, I mean, the French model is not so much popular, and it is not adopted by much democratic countries. France, Turkey, if I'm not mistaken, and Uruguay remain as the three, I mean, unique examples of countries following the French tradition, but the British tradition, I mean, is followed by quite some countries. So Malaysia represents an example to the pursuit of British model compared to, I mean, the Turkish model following the French model. Another reason that I was able to find was the predominance of the secularist state elites in Turkey compared to the predominance of Islamist state elites in Malaysia during the years of foundation. Those elites were actually very much active I mean, in Turkey particularly, a very serious struggle is given between the secularist elites and, let us say, conservative elites. But unfortunately, in Turkish case, during the foundation of the state, the conservative elites some kind of got liquidated. I mean, they have got quite some famous members that we know. Mehmet Akif Ersoy was one of them. Fuat Köprülü was another one. Kazım Karabekir was another one of them. And Mehmet Hocam knows quite some of them, some other of them probably. And Celal Bayar was maybe among them too. Adnan Menderes, we know him, who has been executed as the prime minister of the country. So most of the conservative states elites in Turkey have been liquidated during the establishment of the government. And they left out of the political processes. But we did not have the same experience in Malaysia. And lastly, growing impact of religious education and activists in Malaysia, I say, compared to the secularist nationalists in Turkey, as another cause that I was able to found. So secular nationalism, I mean, has been very powerful in Turkey, and it is powerful even today. Even today, it's so much influential and powerful, and everybody is expected in Turkey to respect the secularist, national character of the Turkish state and the society. And secularism is an immutable part of the Turkish constitution. It is something that they cannot be changed, that cannot be changed, and that cannot be offered to change at the same time. So this is my presentation. Thank you very much for listening patiently until now. Thanks a lot. I hope that you enjoyed it. Your questions and comments and words are going to be welcome.
Okay. Hakan Hocam, thank you very much for this brief introductory lecture about Islam and politics in Turkey and Malaysia. I think the Turkish participants over here have had some sort of memories, start from me, about the state policies in Turkey. I remember my first year in the university in 1986. We peacefully demonstrated on campuses, starting from Ankara, the headquarters of the laïc system. As junior member, probably I was handsome. Our abiler took me with them to visit parliament, to talk, to disseminate our argument, our discourse to the parliament members. I was quiet at that time, but our leaders developed conversations or tried to develop dissemination of the discourse. Why the people outside demonstrating? Not significant changes happened in few years, of course, but some campuses, universities amended internally their law and allowed the girls with headscarves to come into classes. Including Hacettepe University, I was over there, almost 500 sisters with headscarves, the biggest number among the universities at that time. They were freely came into the classes after this demonstrations, but not the other campuses were lucky like this. And another memory, almost the same year, 1987, 8, in my hometown, Üsküdar, in Istanbul, few imams, Hakan Hocam say they were very nice people, they did not challenge the government, yes. Few imams among these hundreds of thousands, collecting, accumulating these muezzins at some time, they kindly criticized during Jum'ah khutbah Of course, they were prosecuted. But not big things happened, but it was unique to hear any contra-argument against the state policies in khutbah. Because the khutbah, even today, if I'm not wrong, provided by the central government, means the Diyanet. So there are, I guess, 3 stages in this talk. Number 1 is new republic after the Ottoman state, means that founding fathers, their roles. The second stage is military after some 3-4 decades, became the dominating factor in Turkish politics. The third factor is political parties representing different types of the social group segments in Turkish society. Beyond this, we can consider probably sub areas like EU. As again, Dr. Hakan mentioned that EU became a very significant factor throughout this laïc system and the contra discourses, freedoms, etc., commencing from Almarhum Turgut Özal, 1982. But during AKP, the early AKP years, 2000s, EU was very significant policy-making process behind the doors or open public space. Especially the schools, Imam Hatip schools, headscarves are considered as a private matter, not Islamic, politically Islamic matter. So this is divided after some experience in throughout these 3-4 decades, Almarhum Erbakan's experiences, his parties dominating in the Turkish Islamist agenda. But later on, this discourse turned into individual, liberal choices. Either I have headscarf or I have a bird or not. This is not a political, this is not Islamic agenda, this is not the Sharia, this is personal choices. So this is another discourse in the last probably 10 years in Turkey has been going on. So last example, I'm not occupying the field, of course, I think. When Abdullah Gül was elected as president in 2007, I was over here in Sumatra. I just followed the news from newspapers and our friends. I heard that the media, secular media, or supporting laïc system, they made a comparison between Turkey and Malaysia. Because Abdullah Gül's wife with headscarf, they say, will Turkey be Malaysia? So, to this scale, it shows also the illiteracy of Turkish media or the secular media, whatever. They do not know the realities in Malaysia. The woman is not what they discourse in their own agenda. But they make clearly this comparison with headscarf, either Iran, early stage, 1980s, 1990s, later on Malaysia, because Malaysia became a sort of the emerging power in global scale. Okay, thank you very much. Please contribute us to understand this subject by your own questions or your statements. Please welcome. Hocam buyurun. Please welcome Osman Hocam.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you, Dr. Hakan. Thank you for your presentation. The topic is very interesting and trying to compare the state-region nexus relationship or history in Malaysia, in Turkey, and Malaysia. I have several points to make. First point regarding the status of the official religion of Malaysia, to which you referred briefly, in order to make the point that there is quite a fundamental difference between the history of Malaysia and the history of Turkey. The popular understanding among both Muslims and non-Muslims is that there was no official religion in the country before the formation of Malaysia. That's not true. Yes, basically Malaysia, when it was it was Malaya first, this peninsula, when Malaya was established as a country. Yes, after negotiations, Islam was accepted as the official religion of the federation. But before Federation of Malaya came into being, Islam in the different Malay states was already official religion. So it's something like when Malaya was formed, the only the body, all different organs were already part of the Islamic thing. It's just that the federation as a unit, just got the official religion. I think that is very important for those who misunderstand. Okay. Point number 2. I think what is important, Dr. Hakan, is to examine the role of the non-political parties, both in Turkey and Malaya and Malaysia. Yeah? I mention this because take for example of Said Nursi Zaman. His influence in the early 1970s in Malaysia, and I mentioned 1970s because for both Malaya and Malaysia and Turkey, the 1970s were a very important turning point, in the state and religion nation. Why? In both, as I said just now, there was precisely you mentioned in early 1970s, Arbakan was the representative, or was the Muslim voice. In Malaya, it was not really the political party, the Islamic party, not yet, no. Islamic party was lying low. Yeah, the one was the really active one was the Malaysian movement of Malaysia, ABIM, headed by Anwar Ibrahim. Anwar Ibrahim were good friends, and Arbakan were very good friends. So they met as youth leader. They met in London and other parts of the world, in America. I myself, I was a student leader in London in early 1970s. I met Arbakan. I listened to Arbakan in London. You know, he was the leader of the Salvation Party. Many Malaysian students at that time were very excited. This is a new Turkey at that time. Done. Yeah. So what happened, because of the student movement, movement in the campuses in the 70, 71, 23, then that caught the attention of the Prime Minister at the time, the second Prime Minister, Tun Abdul Razak. Tun Abdul Razak. It influenced politically, because then, of course, there were other factors contributed, including the fact that the race riots, the ethnic riots in the 1969, and then the formation of the National Council, the Mageran, then of that, movements towards the unity government. So the government is not new in Malaysia. The government of Tun Abdul Razak, and he invited the Islamic Party into that national coalition. But that was made possible by the student, by the NGOs, basically. The only difference is that in Malaysia, the Sufis, the Sufi group did not play a great part. But we understood that in Turkey, underground, in the background, the importance of the Sufi groups. I don't know, you can correct me about that. Yeah. So I think this point basically like you to talk about the early 1970s as the major turning point in the history of that state religion nexus.
Well,
Yeah, thank you.
Well, I actually strongly agree with you. I mean, many of those successful political parties and political movements were actually the product of some kind of actions by civil society organizations in the background. I mean, I strongly agree with this. I mean, for Malaysian case, this was particularly the case, but even for the Turkish case, I mean, without, influential civil society activism behind those political movements would not be successful. We can say this for sure. But I mean, doing research and getting into the subject regarding, I mean, with a look at the movements, I mean, in the social sector, I mean, it's really very difficult sometimes. I mean, the influence of Said Nursi in case of Turkey, for example, is not deniable. I mean, it's undeniable. His influence is undeniable. I mean, he's one of those people that we can cite only. But there were so many other, I mean, religious social leaders who then influenced the political, I mean, movements, inspired political movements. I mean, this is one of the things actually now the AK Party organization is discussing. I mean, they now argue that, I mean, just with a political movement, we don't think that we are going to be so successful. So if we are not able to turn into a social movement, so this is now what the party is, I mean, discussing among itself is that if we cannot turn into a social movement, I mean, we have to make sure that we are not, this success is not going to continue. So, I mean, Mr. Professor, this is an important area of investigation and research. Let us say the growth, the emergence of civil society organizations and social movements in the background of political movements. And there are indeed so many different groups and movements that can be investigated, big and small, in this or that country. I mean, this is not an easy task that I have to say. I mean, in the last year, for example, Diyanet sponsored a kind of research regarding the political inclinations of various religious groups in the country. But it met with such a reaction by those groups, and they said that the Diyanet is trying to discover our political preferences, maybe with good or bad intention. So on the one hand, it's very difficult. On the other hand, I mean, you may not be very welcome to those groups too, because they don't want to keep their political identities public, because they fear from some kind of political persecution. If they, for example, if they are not in agreement with current political, let us say, norms and principles. But I certainly agree with you that, I mean, on the background of those successful political movements, there were even greater, 10 times bigger social movements and activism and activities.
Okay, please welcome Ali Hocam.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you. I think very enlightening. Quick comments. There's a lot more issues to be deliberated, and especially in the presence of our two respected senior professors. I have experience of economics and management. I was lecturing in Seljuk University, KONI, very shortly, and that time was the period when your top class economists who actually happened to be in Malaysia, they go back to Turkey, Sabri Orman, Hoja Sabri Orman, and Nashadat, Sensori, etc., Prof. Arif. So I can see the experience in Konya, which is the Asia part of it. And then I came to Central Bank in Taksim in Istanbul, where Prof. Sabri Orman and these people, they asked me to introduce the Islamic banking finance, that how the Central Bank of Turkey can take the... So, cut the story short, I can see that the Turkey actually got a problem of divide due to the Bosphorus to the European side and to the Asian side. And they are not able to reconcile. When you come to Konya, etc., you see Turkey is as Islamic as Malaysia, very good. When you go to Istanbul, these people struggle to call their identity to be like a European. They want to be European, they want to be identified. So all kind of mixtures are there. So I talked to them in the central bank. There are a lot of economists, they flew from many cities. They were very resistant to accept the fact that why can't they do the, like in Malaysia, we have the hybrid system. We have the Islamic Financial Services Act, and at the same time, we have the Financial Services Act. Financial Services Act provides the governance for the whole country, and Islamic Financial Services Act that is specifically governed for the Islamic banking and transactions. They say, no, brother, you all former British colonies, you have the history of British, your law easy to amend. We got inheritance from the Roman law and not able to adjust. So I realized that where to draw the line? Is it a question of the political will or is it a question of reluctance to be identified as an Islamist? So that was something I'm still looking for the answer because you can say being biased, being Malaysian, grown up here, but I don't see the light coming from there.
I have been doing research on religion and politics with regard to certain actually subjects, and this is only one of them. I have got some other papers and I have got some other manuscript written, and this British came to the port, in occasions to my in my research, various research stuff. And I give it as an example, actually, in many cases, that in the British case, the things are happening very differently. And they are quite democratic, and they are very much pleased with the way they are doing. The British case has got some unique stuff. So when we talk to the Turkish people, for example, sometimes they say that we have to do it like the people in the West too. We have to do it like the Americans and the British. We have to follow the modern world. But when it comes to doing, actually, they, without knowing, they reject those ways that the developed world is doing. In the UK case, for example, the king of the United Kingdom happens to be the head of the church of the country also. So, he is the head of the country. He head of the church. The bishops in the country, some 22, 23 bishops, happen to be appointed representatives in the assembly. They have got their religious courts. The church in the United Kingdom, enjoys quite a lot of legal powers. They, for example, can judge the legal disputes among themselves in their ecclesiastical courts. So they have their own legal system. They have their own courts. If they happen to have some legal issues, they just solve it among themselves without going to secular courts. And they are very much pleased with it, and it doesn't, produce any problems for the other people. So, in my studies in general, I give the British example as the more liberal and democratic one compared to the others. And as a successful example of the, let us say, integration of religion and politics at high levels in a modern, contemporary, liberal democratic country.
Okay. Any questions? Other questions? Please welcome. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question.
Okay.
I want to turn your attention to a hotter burning issue in Turkish politics. What is the impact of the recent fistfight in Turkish parliament on the status of secular nationalism in Turkey, the status of Islam in Turkey, as well as other political parties like the AK party in Turkey? What do you think are the ripple effects, the broader implications, and the cascading consequences of that event? What precipitated that event? Perhaps you can shed light on that. Do you think that event had a seismic impact on Turkish politics? Yeah.
Which event are you talking about exactly? Particular event or the general clash between
Just recently, the fist fight in the parliament.
fist fighting?
Yeah,
in the parliament.
until there was blood on the floor. I'm not too sure if
Yeah,
there was a
I watched
couple.
it quite several times, whether it was a fist or not, actually. I mean, I watched it at least 10 times, but he was not able to punch him right, just touch on the shoulder. Just, I mean, I got very happy to see that he was not able to punch it. I mean, it would be very shameful if he was able to do so. So it hasn't been a fist incident, just man touched the shoulder and the man fell on the ground, something like why he was trying to protect himself. But why did that happen? I mean, I think the representative speaking a bit spoke badly about AK Party practices or something like that. I mean, he a bit, I mean, exceeded the limits of the opposition, and he met with such a stuff. But I mean, compared to, I mean, some other assemblies, I don't know, it's still not such a terrible thing. I mean, we see such fights in Korean assembly, Thai assembly very frequently. I mean, quite some assemblies, I mean, they are having very terrible, I mean, kick and punch fights. So, I mean, I have seen the incidents. So both of them has received a condemnation, some kind of condemnation, both of the representatives. But I mean, there was not a fight as far as I was able to see. But what it caused is that it led to a 4%, so 2% decline in the Turkish stock market just at that moment. So the Turkish stock markets are able to recover only in the last 2 to 3 days. I mean, it had a very bad influence at the time. Maybe some 2 to 3 billion Turkish liras have been lost as a result of that incident. But now the market is recovering as far as I can see.
Yes. Welcome. Other question? Please, sister. Welcome.
Sir, could you talk more about how it was used religion to combat the radical leftists? What specifically they used to do in Turkey?
Oh yeah, that is a very actually an interesting stuff. That is something that usually brings the secularists and the conservatives together in recent Turkish political history, let us say. So Turkish secularists, actually, even though they are secularists, they don't support communism. They are not in peace with communism. They saw it as a very serious problem in Turkish political life, and they saw it as the major cause of the chaos and anarchy in the streets in Turkey in 1970s and 1960s. So all of a sudden they discovered that they indeed can use religion to combat problems related with radical leftist ideologies. And this was one of the reasons, actually, for the secularists to accept the proposals of increasing the hours of religious education in the schools, sometimes to make it mandatory. So, it was not mandatory to take religious lessons in Turkey, but the secularists, even they, agreed with the notion of making it mandatory. So now the education of religion is mandatory in Turkey, even in the secular schools. They have to take that lesson. And one of the reasons for that is still to combat those kind of radical leftist ideologies. And have they been successful with this? Yes, they did actually. It is also part of the job of the imams in the mosques to talk against, radical leftist stuff in the khutbahs and those kind of things they give, and they really enjoy to speak about such things, to talk about communism and anarchism and terrorism and those kind of things. And they also have got the support of the government behind this. So this happened to be one of those things that the secularists and the conservatives come together in the use of religion in public life, but they argue that it has to be limited with those kind of things mostly. And it mustn't go beyond a little bit, those kind of things.
By the way, there are diverse mazhabs of leftist ideology in Turkey. Let's say communism, there is TKP, Turkish Communist Party, but very minority, very
uh, in terms of political power, there is no. But there are some other types of leftist understandings of this, starting from CHP, for instance, Cumhuriyet Halk Partisi, some others playing their roles in, not maybe in political parties, but in civil societies. Yeah.
So all these ideologies like communism, anarchism, nihilism, Marxism, socialism, to what extent are considered or are banned or are considered extreme in Turkey?
I mean, radical leftist stuff, radical leftist, I mean, the radicalism you speak about, I mean, the radicalism is usually associated with trying to introduce revolution in the country, to change the political system into a communist one from a capitalist, liberal, so-called democratic one. So, I mean, quite some of them had the goal, they had the intentions to introduce a communist state like the one it was with the Soviet Union, like the one in China, like their examples. And I mean, some events took place in Turkish history. Sometimes they, for example, kidnapped various members of various foreign embassies. Sometimes they killed some others, even they killed some US, I mean, some staff working in US embassy, UK embassy maybe, Dutch embassy. Some of them have been saved, some of them died, and there is a earlier Israeli consulate who has been assassinated by one of those leftist organizations for the claim that Israel was for that time was one of the major allies of American imperialism. So this was small incident still for the time being, but they had the major goal to introduce a communist state in the country by throwing away the present one. And did they organize various other terrorist activities? Yes, they did actually. I mean, quite some of them. And even the PKK terrorism that we have today consider itself as a Marxist, Stalinist independence organization. So it also happens to be the part of the radical leftist movements in Turkey.
Okay. So this is a past story, not today, right? 70s, 60s, because at the time, Cold War era, the Turkish communists were close to, since Ottoman era, close to Russia. They supported each other, not the Chinese communism, of course, but less Maoist. Yes, there were in Turkey. But story like this, ideologically, of course, they were powerful. They wished to change the system, but at the end of the day, even they evolved in themselves, in their ideologies.
So these days, in Turkey, is still prohibited of spreading?
No, as I told you, there is TKP, Turkish Communist Party, is legal. Yeah, there is no any ban or the.
There is actually 8 to 9 leftist, communist political parties in Turkey, quite some of them. And they joined in the elections. There is the Labour Party, there is the Communist Party, there is the Turkish Communist Party, there is the Vatan Party, there is a feminist Communist Party, by the way, another feminist one, Communist Party. It took my attention in the last elections that, I mean, there is quite some of them, quite some of them. So it is not illegal to use the title communism in party titles, but, I mean, they cannot try to, I mean, be engaged in attempts to change the political system in the country.
Yeah, do they belong to basically the Syrian and Kurdish border, or is it in the heart of the?
They don't belong to a particular area, I have to say. Generally speaking, they don't belong to a particular, they don't come from a particular region, but they have supporters at various parts of the country. And interestingly, by the way, one of those parties supported Erdogan during the presidential elections. Though Perinçek's Vatan Party, he said that, I mean, it is the traditional communist party in the country, They said that in the last elections they are going to support Erdogan because they think that they believe that he is a better candidate. They believe that he gives a better fight against imperialism. They believe that his performance is much better and it's going to be much better than his alternative. And so they decided, interestingly, to vote for Erdogan this time while the other parties of the left didn't.
I think this is I think it's another nice research activity, I think, the Communist Party and the current government relation. Yes, please, Arif.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Tashakkular, Hakan Hoja. My question is with regards to the idea that perhaps it's a conspiracy theory, but the role of the Donme in Turkey, and is the Donme still relevant in Turkey in the sense that sometimes they are seen as the scapegoat when it comes to politics and
Did you say? I didn't understand
the
exactly.
Donme?
Donme?
Yeah, the Jewish minority Donme. Yeah. Is there much consideration about this particular group in Turkey at the moment, or is it something that is not talked about today?
Well, I mean, you are talking about hidden Jewish groups in the country. Do we have hidden Jewish political activists in Turkey? I mean, there are claims to that, I have to say certainly. There are claims that there are certain hidden Jewish groups, I mean, or some groups sympathize with Jewish causes, or some groups who are supported by, I mean, some Jewish financiers, let us say. And they are argued to be very much influential. I don't know whether these are real or not, but we can say for sure that Israel, this or that way, they are trying to have some influence in political life in every country. In a country like Turkey, they will certainly try to do so. Because Turkey is a very, active actor in the Middle East politics. I mean, if they can do something this or that way, I'm sure they're certainly going to try to do it. Because, Turkey, what I have to say is that Turkey is able to hold itself very hardly currently because of those things happening in Palestine. Our president even spoke about getting into war with Israel if such things keep going on. And now Netanyahu takes it very seriously that Turkey is a very serious threat to Israel, and they counted 3 countries as a very serious problem to Israel. One of them was Turkey, the other one was Iran, and another one was Yemen. So they consider these 3 countries as the most serious challenge that they have to face, and that they call international community to do something against those 3 countries, including Turkey.
Okay. Hocam, please welcome.
Yeah, thank you. You have brought up a very significant point, shifting the perspective between Turkey and Malaysia. A very fundamental point is that Turkey has been practicing the ideological doctrine of Laïcism as a state ideology, but Malaysia has not and never. And Prof. Osman has rightfully placed that. I'm only complimenting and re-emphasizing that even after 1957 or before, Malaysia and this region has many polities. In Malaysia, we have 9 Islamic polities, 9 sultanates, and in the region we have few hundreds over the centuries that establishes the fundamental basis of the Islamicate Islam as a religion and a state, or rather as a fundamental value in governance and government. Because why I'm saying this is in recent years there has been rhetorics to undermine the position of Islam in Malaysia, making Malaysia worse than Turkey as such. But we look at the developments as and culminating in the federal constitution. Islam has been placed and entrenched as formalized as the religion of the federation. So again, we have to place that opposite to the ideology of Laïcism, which is anti-religion, suppressing the visibility of religion, and fundamentally expunging any form of religion from the state.
Well, actually, a question. I mean, any of us would like to ask a question of how did I mean the traditional Islamic Ottoman society turned into a kind of the staunchest secularist societies almost of all times all of a sudden? I mean, this question can be asked by any of us, and I mean, what I can say is that I mean, by intimidation, by fear, by persecution, and those kind of things for over years. I mean, secularism has been some kind of being established in the country, and only recently we are able to talk about the freedom of religion in the country, I mean, at some acceptable levels. Only recently, I mean, we can talk about something like this, but Malaysia did not have such an experience, even though at that time Malaysia was, in principle at least, a part of, I mean, was subject to the Ottoman Caliph all the time. Islam has disappeared from the political sphere altogether in a matter of 4 to 5 years. I mean, by very hard measures, by very heavy measures. I mean, most of those things are, I mean, conducted during the single party period, not by Atatürk, but by Ismail Tironi particularly. And as you can see, as you have seen, even going for pilgrimage was forbidden in Turkey. I mean, I'm sure you would like to, how could the people prohibit going for pilgrimage? If I want to take the ship and want to go to pilgrimage, for example, couldn't I go? It was forbidden for various political reasons. They say, because we had a crisis with Syria, we had a problem with Iraq, so we were not able to use the ground transportation. But if I want to go from over Russia, let us say from the sea, or from the west, could I not still go? No, the people were not allowed to go for pilgrimage. You're going to say that this is very much, I mean, oppressive, and no such type of secularism can be defended in any country. I'm sure any of you would say this. But, I mean, what I should say at the end is that, I mean, that secularist campaign, this or that way, has been successful in Turkey to collect and to produce a secularist segment of the society who are still very powerful in Turkey and who are hoping to win the next elections, by the way. And they are very much, I mean, persuaded about it. And now they are in fight, so having the right candidate, everybody is trying to be a candidate in the other party. And I mean, this has been a fact of Turkish socio-political life now, and they still have influence. And we have to say that AK Party has not finished the business yet, and I don't know if they have such an intention to do. And it is not sure that they are going to win the next elections. And we are not sure that those things are going to continue. And things can turn the other way around in Turkey, and if they don't want that to happen that way, they have to, in my opinion, give, I mean, they have to, let us say, give some importance to civil society activities in particular, activities particularly, as our professor says. I mean, everybody now, the specialists say that if the party would like to be successful, they must certainly invest in the civil society, I mean, social moments, part of the debate particularly. But they're not doing it currently either.
In fact, that's true. Is it adjusting all of a sudden, or are you say few years or decades? I would say rather overnight become from Islamist to secularist, and then is this because the love and hate problem that happened due to the Lawrence of Saudi Arabia, and then the problem with the Turks and Arabs, and that put them away from the lovers of the Islam to become haters of the Islam?
Yeah. Well, from a perspective of the social theory perspective, I mean, they are very keen about talking on those kind of things. I mean, the secularist elites produce some kind of literature. They have produced some kind of narrative. They, I mean, produce some kind of mentality, some kind of ideology, and they have imposed it on the people, and they suppressed the opposition. They liquidated them. I mean, even the best, best generals, best conservative, conservative people who made great services during the independence war. I mean, even all of them are driven outside of the processes. So actually, what we can see, I mean, what happened in Turkey is that thing that happened in all the single-party governments in communist or other times. So no opposition was permitted, opposition was suppressed. I mean, there was no freedom of talk. The assembly members, there was an assembly, but the members were not coming from the general public, but they were something like appointed. And in that period, by the way, the state and the party was united, something like. So, for example, the Republican People's Party, head of a city, was also the governor of that city. For example, Istanbul, Republican People's Party, the leading party, single party, happened to be the governor of that city also. And that was the case for Ankara and all the cities. So the state and the city was united. I mean, they had produced their own literature, and that went on for some 20 to 30 years. And the opposition did not make any use until, let us say, until the end of the Second World War, until they have understood that they cannot maintain this rigid line in the face of the dictatorships losing in the Second World War. So, I mean, Turkey started to collect a very much negative attention from international actors too. And at that time, a little bit unwillingly, it's been understood that we must also turn to a kind of democracy, and we must also permit the establishment of some other parties too. So from 1920s to 1945, 1950, let us say, for 30 years, there was only a single party. And they did all they could, and they have been, as I say, successful in producing a secularist movement in Turkey. And they are also economically powerful too, we have to say, and they are still very influential. So even though, I mean, they lose the elections, they are still very powerful.
I think as Arif implicitly mentioned that dönmeler are still functioning in Turkish politics probably, right? Okay, and that the question, yes, Osman Hocam.
I would like you to say something about the possible future of Islam in Turkey. After 50 years of Republican secularism, extreme extremism from our point of view in Malaysia, and after another 50 years of revival of Islam in Turkey, if we take the early 1970s as the new turning point, you would see the possibility of, well, due to some forces, external and so on, that there will be a kind of reversal return to secularism, or you feel that the change, the transformation in the last 50 years in favor of Islam, in favor of the presence of Islam, is such that you don't foresee in the next 100 years maybe or more that Turkey will experience another kind of secularism?
That's a very nice question. But what I can say shortly about it is that it's going to depend on the performance of the government. This has been very important in the last few elections, that the performance criteria mattered a lot. It mattered a lot in the recent elections, and it's going to matter a lot still in the next elections. So, I mean, the government is trying to observe the performance criteria. So in the next few years, they are going to try to, I mean, improve the Turkish economy. They are going to try to improve state services. They are going to try to improve the satisfaction of the people from the governments. I mean, if they become successful in this, I mean, we can say that the likelihood of them winning the next elections and maintaining the tradition is very much high. But if they cannot do this for, let us say, for some reason from inside or outside, or domestic or international crisis, I mean, they may not be able to be very much successful. By the way, the people don't care about if we are having an international crisis, if the problems that we are having are because of some international crisis, I mean, the people just would like to see a successful government that is always giving, I mean, more and more salary, more money, more public services, greater welfare expenditures, I mean, better health services, better education, and those kind of things. And the general people usually, I mean, they don't care about whether the government has money or not, but they always want the government to do best even under the worst conditions. So if they become successful in doing these kind of things, I am sure that, I mean, the people are going to take note of it. But
I'm still not satisfied. Sorry, the moderator. I'm still not satisfied. Because I know your topic is political, so your bias focus is political. But a society changes, transforms, not just because of political parties, you know. It's civilizational. This is what I'm interested in. I'm just at the level of ideas. Are we now seeing in Turkey the flourishing of ideas, Islamic civilization, political, in philosophy, in arts, and basically, in others, the Turkish mind, the contemporary Turkish mind is heading for that. So it's not simply looking at the role of advanced party. No, this is much more than that. Yes. At the level of people, the ideas.
So this is the subject of my next speech after 2 days. So we are going to have a critique of democracy. Unfortunately, in democratic countries, sometimes ideals are left behind and the people prioritize services from the state, even though
we are not yet in this stage, Osman Bakar Hocam. We are not yet in civilizational thought, or we can reach or not this level, but the fundamental apparatus of the state, people looking for the governments in Turkey or similar countries, they perform well, function well, serve well to the community or not. Thought, philosophy, civilization comes later on.
So,
I guess. Sorry.
This is going to be one of the points that I make a critique of democracy. So in democracies, unfortunately, the best democracies of our time also happen to be the countries with the greatest debt. The United States is sometimes said the best country, but it has got the highest public debts in the world. It is followed by Germany, UK, and France, and those kind of countries. Why? Because they are being forced to satisfy the people, and if they don't have money, they have to borrow from this or that, from the users and the banks. So this is going to be one of the points that I'm going to criticize democracy in the speech after 2 days, hopefully. And this is unfortunately driving the countries into very serious debt crisis, and it is not helping the people to get more educated, enlightened, more articulate, and let us say, a better constructive part of the citizenry. So unfortunately, I mean, democracy is a bit short of, I mean, growing, let us say, more moral, more concerned, more considerate society. And then, I mean, that is very sad, I have to say, that is very sad.
Okay, please welcome.
Thank you so much. I just have one observation. You did not talk about, you talked about European Union, and we all know the ambition of Turkey to join European Union, but at one point, I think it disappeared. And I think that costed Sachula, I think the Sachulas not to be so happy. But what about the role of NATO? You've not mentioned NATO in regards to, should I say, being part of NATO, is it a precondition for Turkey to be protected as a secular state?
Well, did Turkey give up the intentions to be a member of the European Union? Actually, we did not. We still want to be a member of European Union. But we see that we are not able to carry out all and everything that European Union wants. And we see that it is not possible to do all and everything that European Union wants because we cannot really do it. I mean, the government in power certainly wants Turkey to become a member of European Union, but certain things are beyond, I mean, the capabilities of the government. So, I mean, they want substantial, tremendous changes in the legal system, political system, economic system. So many things they want. So many things, and Turkey is not, I don't know if you are able to do this, and they want so much concessions from the country. Some of those concessions are, I mean, demanded directly, some of those are demanded indirectly. I mean, they may even wanting some territorial concessions from Turkey too regarding the dispute with Greece and with Cyprus, let us say. So, I mean, some of those things come, I mean, as direct demands, but some others as indirect demands, as we say. And as you know, Greece is a member of the European Union, and they are some kind of trying to use this as a kind of stake. So they are trying to tell Turkey that if you want to be a member of the European Union, you have to take our confirmation, and if you want our approval, you have to give us something in the Aegean Sea that we have to like. And Turkey, I don't think that Turkey is going to give any such concessions. So even though we want it, we may not be able to be a member to Turkey. But I believe that Turkey can do better even without European Union. And I believe that Turkey can do this. So now the government is trying to prepare Turkey to, which future was it? 2053 dream. Turkish century project. Now we have, the government says that, I mean, if European Union doesn't accept us, we are going to follow our own way. We are going to try to achieve our goals by our own means. But what about NATO? Now people are confused about the role of Turkey's role in NATO, and actually the legitimacy of NATO is also questioned sometimes regarding the recent issues in the Palestine. United States, United Kingdom, Germany, I mean, leading members of NATO are now engaged in very serious human rights violations in Palestine, in Gaza. So what should Turkey do? Turkey is unfortunately putting its way apart with leading members of NATO. I mean, because of that issue. And it is not possible for Turkey to sit together with the United States and Britain because of this dispute on the NATO table and try to give a united picture. I mean, this is not something that Turkey are going to do. So NATO is unfortunately, we don't have such a, let us say, great loyalty to NATO for this reason, and we cannot have it. And we are not going to let Turkey become an agent of the West for its goals regarding Palestine. And whether they use NATO or European Union, Turkey is going to act with principles, certainly.
One small anecdote, Turkey or Ottomans lost the opportunity to be a member of Europe. 1867, Abdul Aziz conducted his unique European travels in diverse countries, and people were talking at that time, his son Murad, Mahkota Murad, will be married with the Queen Elizabeth. They were so close during that time, but it didn't happen. So since then, I guess Turkey has lost the opportunity to be a member of Europe. It is also related to the civilizational dimension, why Turkey could not adapt all these rules and regulations, or why Europe could not accept Turkey by its own stance with historical past and values. And any other questions, please? Last 8 minutes. Yes, please.
Just a quick one. So I've got two questions. The first one is, you said that Turkey, the government of Turkey is giving out a lot of, not giving out a lot of benefits to the public, like public health services and so forth. But Erdogan is a populist, so I thought he caters to the people. So
He is giving too much, that's what I say.
So isn't that a good thing
He's
for the
giving
people?
too much. The government performs too much in welfare sector.
Okay.
And so much social benefits are provided. I can give so many examples. It can take 30 minutes if I count it, by the way.
Okay, my second question is that I know I'm opening a powder keg of controversy, but what do you think about the Turkish denial of the Armenian genocide? Like till today, do you think that should, why not just admit it and just move on? I mean, or that cannot be, you know.
Well, Turkey does not deny anything that happened. I mean, what Turkey says is that, I mean, the events of the time must be investigated properly. I mean, it must be investigated with a scientific academic perspective by the scientists, by the historians, by the political scientists, by biologists. Everything must be investigated, and then the claims must be put forward. I mean, Turkish people are talking about Turkish genocide. Azeri people are talking about Azeri genocide. Kurdish people are talking about Kurdish genocide. They say that it has been the Turks, Azeris, and the Kurds who have been assassinated, who have been subjected to genocide at that time. And even today, we are discovering and exploring and finding, I mean, mass Turkish graves, mass Muslim graves in various parts of Anatolia. I mean, that is, if we are going to talk with reference to, I mean, it's a very huge topic, by the way. I mean, what we see in the documents, official documents of the time, is that the Ottoman states did never issue any document for the extermination of the Armenian people in the society. There are no such official documents issued by any Turkish authority, any member of the government, to kill the Armenians wherever they have been captured, like the one it happened in Holocaust. So until today, there are no documents stating that Turkey, either here or there, ordered the Armenians to be collected and killed altogether in one place. There are no such things. But there is the issue of, let us say, deportation. They have been ordered to be deported from one place to the other. And it is, I mean, some of them lost their life, of course, because of the carelessness of the Ottoman officers, maybe, because of the carelessness. But until today, I mean, there are no, I mean, proof of the Ottoman officers getting official orders from the government and intentionally killing Armenian civilians. I mean, recently I read an article by a Turkish Christian Chaldean who now lives in Australia, who shows a letter, who gives reference to a letter stating that, according to his opinion, states that the Ottoman government in Istanbul gave order for the extermination of some Armenian people. But I looked at the letter, and when I read it, I mean, I got very surprised, because it was saying that the government was ordering the collection of an Armenian group and their annihilation at a particular place, but stating that those Armenians, I mean, who get engaged in killing the Muslims. So he says that this is an example of genocide. But when you look at the letter, it says that the man gets the order of collecting Armenians who are engaged in killing the Muslims, and their collection and their killing at a particular place. So until today, I don't know. But it is what we can agree at this stage is that, did so many Armenians lose their life at that time? Yes, they did. Probably they did. I mean, during the deportation, because of carelessness, because of the lack of food and security, because of some attacks by terrorist groups from outside, from non-governmental groups, did so many Armenians lose their life? In my opinion, they did. But, I mean, they haven't been killed by an official government action. But it is very sad, of course, we have to say that so many Armenian citizens of the country lost their lives. I mean, we have to say certainly that, I mean, it is not nice. It is not acceptable. I mean, it cannot be approved so many non-Christians to lose their lives this or that way. Now, it is very sad. It is very sad that so many Armenians lost their lives, and we can never enjoy it. And this is not something that we can enjoy. And maybe the Turkish state must even pay compensation for those civilians who lost their life, because of careless Ottoman practices. We are of course very sad that, so many innocent people, children, women, elderly people lost their lives carelessly. Maybe this is not something that we frequently say, but we have to say it. But until today, there are no, maybe not even a single document stating that the Ottoman state in Istanbul ordered, a careless extermination of the Armenians altogether, wherever they have been captured.
In fact, this matter has been going around since 1990s, as far as I remember. And the Turkish authorities, historians, inviting the international circles to do research significantly and to find out the realities. But till today has not been realized. So thank you very much. Yes, please.
Just on that note, I read somewhere, and perhaps again on the point of the Donme, it's interesting because the Young Turks were the ones who, perpetuated. There's an argument.
We are talking about 1913, 1914, 1915, during the time or before, just before the World War. And during that time, Ottoman lost the authority in central government because of the coup d'etat against the caliphate. So this is very complicated era. Even we are talking about the eastern part, southern part of Turkey, border of Iraq, contemporary border of Iran. So complicated. Many actors. Like probably we can make a similarity Lebanon in contemporary era. Many actors, but you could not divide who is the one who conducted these sort of things. So thank you very yes, please.
Sorry, please. Last question. Is the present Turkish military desecularized to the point of no return? The Turkish military that used to be the guardian of secularism?
That's what I was trying to say actually at parts of my speech. That, in my opinion, it is not possible for the Turkish military to be desecularized altogether, even against all and everything that the government can do. And that's not possible. And they even fear of them, actually. There is still the fear of military reaction, potential military reactions in Turkey too. The politicians have the fear. And they know that they cannot change all and everything. And this danger always, continues. If they feel that they have been so much pressure, if the military feels that they have been so much pressure, they can attempt a military intervention again also. But regarding the Armenian genocide claims, maybe this is something that the Turkish officials neglect to say that. They must at least say that they are having very great sadness for those Armenian civilians who lost their life. We must be able to say this for sure. And they must say this at every occasion, which they are not saying. But whenever they ask this question, they say that no, there is no such thing, nothing happened. And we don't express any sorrow. But actually, we must be able to express the sorrow. Losing of the life by the Armenians is not something that we can enjoy because they lived with Turkish people for centuries. They were very much pleased with the Ottoman state and the society. And even today, until today, it is really very sad that Istac-Iium, caused the death of so many Christians in that region, by their, let us say, unacceptable things. And it's really very sad. We are very sad about it.
If I may just say, because I spoke with someone who's an Armenian survivor who migrated to the U.S. She got a PhD at Texas Austin and is now a professor at the Harvard Extension School. So she told me about it, and we read books. There are, literature and all, journals about that. So I think that's documented. It's not something.
In fact, this is the case. That's why similar things happen in Turkey. Turkish historians, social scientists studied did surveys in the field. That's the point. I mean, this group of intellectuals or academics could not come together. Another point, positive one, in Turkish case, and the civil society or even the Armenian, the assassinated one, and what's the name of Armenian journalist? He invited accepted people actually to talk sincerely, and he was welcome during that time. Hrant Dink, yes. So, I mean, there are some aura, but the professionality should be over there. Okay.
I would say something. I mean, actually, what I say is exactly because of that reason that so many Armenians, they say that they lost their relatives during the deportation. I mean, their memories are so strong. Their expressions of feeling are so strong that, I mean, you can certainly see that they lost their relatives and friends on the way. Some of them say, for example, they were ordered to leave their village together with some 13 relatives. And they say when they had arrived to their destination, they were only 3 people. All the others were not known where they are gone. So, I mean, these are the kind of things that the Armenians remember and they write on their literature. And I mean, we are not in a position to deny those kind of things. Of course, those kind of things happen, and that's the reason. I mean, that's why we are very sorry and we are very sad. But I mean, the claims mustn't go so much as to claim that the Turkish state directly ordered such orders of killing, and that the Armenian side, I mean, unfortunately, they neglect to mention about the massacres that they conducted. I don't know if you are aware of that. I mean, when you look at the literature, you are going to see that there are so many Kurdish Muslim, Turkish Muslim, even Persian Muslim, Azeri Muslims who have been massacred crazily by the Armenian bandits.
I was just thinking about that was a legal loophole because that's during the Ottoman Empire time. You could say that the Ottoman Empire did it, but now we are a brand new Turkish state, so we didn't do it. There was the previous administration.
The Ottoman Empire didn't do it. I mean,
Okay.
the Ottoman state didn't do it, but I mean, so there is a definition of genocide as you know it. For something to be called as genocide, it has to be conducted like the current Israeli state. I mean, by the government hand, directly attacking the civilians, giving the orders to kill. So Ottoman Empire did not give such an order. They did not issue such a campaign. They did not be engaged in any such campaigns. And I mean, this is written even in the Russian records, Russian archives. Russian archives tell that it was indeed the Armenians who were killing the Muslims. And there are so many archival documents. I mean, the previous Turkish Ministry of Defense, Hulusi Akar, has written his dissertation on this topic. He gave a speech last time, and he gives direct reference to Russian archives and even American archives, which indicate that the Armenian bandits are, burning the villages, killing entire villagers, in places that they can capture, and they are running a campaign of extermination in Turkish Muslim-dominated places.
Okay, thank you very much. All the questions and answers, the discussion, I hope has been very fruitful and contribute to your future studies and hopefully inspire to us to do some other similar activities. By this occasion, I would like to announce an event tomorrow will be held over here. Elements in Islam and Sciences. The speaker, Professor Dr. Stefano Bigliardi, Associate Professor of Philosophy and Al-Akhawan University, Morocco. It will be online. Oh, physical, okay. So please welcome tomorrow for this event. Excuse me?
What nationality?
National, I guess Stefano Bigliardi, Italian? Italian. Okay. 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 Hakan Hocam, thank you very much for your kind presentation again.
I thank you very much. I was not expecting such a participation.
Okay.
And
They made surprise, yes. Excellent. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Would you like to present this?
It wasn't necessary. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.
Thanks very much.
Yeah.
Thanks so much. I don't think that
Please, for group photo, the tradition over here in Istac